being I see there's just a few of us on the call right now, so thank you to those that are on the call. I think I will wait a couple of minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, not more, to get started, just to allow any others who are just a little bit late getting joined, and then we'll get going from there. So a couple of minutes and I'll be right back. Okay, thanks everybody for your patience. It's 3 minutes. I think that's enough time for everybody to join in. Thanks very much for making time today to participate in this. As I can see that some of you were already on one or maybe both of the previous meetings for the general Alpine meeting as well as the H class meeting. So I'm going to work hard to try not to be redundant at all, but to just talk about those things that are of interest to all of you as either members of the program or parents of members of the program. So first of all, welcome. Thanks everybody for being here on the call. I'm going to talk a little bit about our staffing philosophy within the ability program that encompasses our FIS and U16. As I mentioned earlier, there's several of us that play multiple roles in the organization. So in addition to being the Alpine director, I take the responsibility of being the head ability coach, and then further the head U16 coach, and trying to keep our program overhead and expenses as low as possible to run our team and our staff as efficiently as possible, and therefore be able to try to maintain our program fees as low as possible. So joining me on staff, and it's really pleasing to me to be, I think, the third year now that we have the same staff, with in addition to myself, then Doug Elsey is our head FIS coach, who tilts towards the FIS athletes. Jack Farrell is our other full-time assistant coach, who is also our strength and conditioning director, with the additional responsibility this year of picking up that responsibility for the entire club with Chris Hughes' departure last spring. So his role within the club has expanded and his responsibility, but he continues to have that same role with us as an assistant coach on Hill throughout the winter. Tina Buckheister returns to our staff as a part-time coach, nearly full-time. She's on our team anywhere from 4 to 6 days every week. She also brings the additional abilities of having spent the first 20 years of her professional life as a physical therapist. So she is able to help assess, little soreness and injuries and those kinds of things, and oftentimes be able to prescribe, some specific exercises, or even to help in some situations. And then John Crone is our final coach within the ability staff, and he tilts also towards the FIS athletes, particularly helping us cover any of our travel events, and as well specifically with all of our with our speed events and training. So his tilt is towards our speed events and our FIS athletes. That said, we employ a team coaching approach where all 5 of us are coaching all of the athletes that are within the team. So regardless of whether it's Doug tilting towards the FIS, he will be working with all of the kids in the program, whether U16 or FIS age, part-time or full-time. And likewise, I the same with our U16 or with my U16 focus, continue to be part of the team, as are all 5 of our coaches working with all of the kids within the program. That does also mean that we need to, really be smart about how we expand our program and constrain any growth, because we want to make certain that we have always space for our athletes who are advancing from, whether that's from age class into our U16 or other local kids who may have moved to the community or what have you. We want to be able to accommodate those always. But at the same time, we want to make certain that we're not allowing our program to grow. One of the things that I've learned over time is that there's a certain amount of growth and new blood, if you will, that's additive to a program. But when it gets to be too much, then it actually stretches our resources and makes it hard for us to maintain the same relationships with the team of athletes we have, and to manage our resources effectively. So as I think everybody knows, we closed our enrollments last year already on June 1st. I expect that will be a similar situation this year. We had, of course, some changes over that time as family situations changed, or maybe athlete interest changed in some cases. And so we were able to, to include people that we waitlisted at that time and be able to, to have them join our program selectively. Also, one of the features of our program is that we train our part-time and full-time athletes together, as well as training almost 100% of the time our FIS and U16 athletes together, and almost 100% of the time our genders together, meaning our men and women or boys and girls. There are, of course, some situations where our trainings are attended by a large enough number of athletes that, particularly for slalom training, the quality of our training would suffer if we all train in the same course. And so in those instances, we'll typically have 2 courses, but set parallel with each other on the same venue and managed by the same group of coaches, so that, again, that team of 5, or whichever of the 5 of us are on in any given training session, are able to manage the training environment and manage the racers and provide that coaching. What it also means is that we oftentimes will have our part-time and full-time athletes in different places in terms of, the number of days they've had, at this time of year, even on snow, or the time of, number of days that they have had recently in one discipline or another. And that's a little bit imperfect. And so what we really are doing is providing part-time access to our full-time program. The program is designed for the athletes who are able to be there full-time. Always we keep an eye on the balance of disciplines, making certain that on weekends where we know that we're going to have the majority of our part-time athletes training, we're either training 1 day each in each of the disciplines, or alternating weekends between the disciplines, so that we don't have a situation where, let's say, an athlete who is only able to train on weekends only has slalom training, because that's what we do every weekend, but rather, split that up as best we can. But it is imperfect. Sometimes, we'll have a slalom weekend, and then the following weekend will be a GS weekend, and then happens to be a weekend that a part-time athlete can't be there. And then the next time they return, we're in a slalom weekend again. And so the training is not imperfect, or, as it would be in the ideal. But we try to keep all of those kind of factors in mind as we schedule our training and schedule our disciplines. And of course, we're always keeping a keen eye on what's coming up in the race calendar to make certain that we're having appropriate preparation for the races that the athletes are skiing. Trying to consider both the FIS and the US Ski and Snowboard or SYNC calendars when we're scheduling that. And then when we have really unusual circumstances where we are just on really divergent paths, either men and women or U16 and FIS or what have you, that, that we do our best to accommodate that in our training, given the resources we have available to us. It's important for us to talk, or for me to talk a little bit about our fall training, and particularly as I've expressed in in my recent communications in Team Snap, it's very fluid right now. The reason for that is because Copper anticipated having significantly more of its early season training terrain open than they've been able to do. Obviously, the Copper is in a unique situation amongst all of the resorts in Colorado and throughout North America in terms of having such favorable conditions for snowmaking, and so are doing far better than anyone else in terms of that. But at the same time, teams have booked in, and Copper booked teams in based on what they anticipated were the opening days of all the venues, and because of the snowmaking situation, they haven't been able to follow that schedule. So as a result, there are teams that are booked here that in anticipation of there being, significantly more space available. Now, the good news is the speed venue opened to the finish today for the first day. Myself and some of the other coaches were up helping to finish the setup on that yesterday afternoon. And they are running downhill all the way to the bottom today, which is positive and takes some of the pressure off. And we anticipate that the tech venue, they're pushing snow on it today and into tonight, trying to finish up some snowmaking. And then we'll be busy up there. When I say we, both the competition crew at Copper, as well as our own coaching staff, who we always pitch in to help with that, as well as visiting teams and so forth. We'll be up over the course of the next couple of days, tomorrow and Monday, maybe even into Tuesday, getting the snow watered and all of the safety installations set, which again involves several hundred B-nets to get that venue set up. Obviously it's a large watering project to get a watered lane all the way down from the top of the tech venue to the bottom. So there still is some work to do, but the good news is that, within a couple of days and in time for the NORAMs, which are slated to start there on the 18th, 18, 19, 20, 21, I think are the 4 days of GS NORAMs, and then 22, 23, the races that had to be canceled in Vail because of where they are in terms of their snowmaking for the T-bar and their training venue. Those were delayed by 4 days, meaning they were scheduled to be in front of the GSs. They're now on the back end of the GSs, and they're moved over to Copper, which is not insignificant at all. The Copper picked those up. That was very challenging and a real service to the sport for them to do that, given all the other pressures they have on right now. So that's kind of a long-winded explanation for why sometimes our training is as fluid as it is. We've scheduled a certain amount of training space or requested it. We've a couple of weeks out tried to anticipate what that would be and built our schedules around that. And then ultimately we're not finding out until 5 or even 6 o'clock the evening before what finally those assignments are, in terms of what space on the hill we have and, what time slots we have. And even in some extreme cases, whether we have a spot because of the needs of all of the teams trying to be met. Obviously, our situation at Copper is one of enormous support by Copper. The training that we're provided is the envy of everyone, both here in the United States as well as from around the world, that come here and see the kind of opportunities we have in our season from the 22nd of October this year until what was our last day of spring training last year on the 18th of June is really unprecedented. And so for us to help Copper and facilitate their ability to generate the revenue from the important early season and also spring training revenue sources that really support our training throughout the year, is a very small price to pay for the inconvenience of the tremendous resources we have. That said, it's incredibly frustrating to all of us, when we have to make those last minute changes, and we know that the challenges that presents to everyone. So, apologies for that, and at the same time, a really heartfelt thank you for everybody's understanding and flexibility and appreciation of kind of all of the factors that are in play, particularly during this time of year. But we can from time to time have those sort of unexpected challenges mid-season as well. That sort of leads me a little bit into our communication strategy and helping to explain that to everyone. So our goal is always to provide all the information ahead of time so that questions and individual conversations are required only to the smallest extent possible. And so we try very hard to, have that information, whether it's available on our own website in terms of, general program information, most specifically in our calendars that we try to make sure are really accurate, kept up to date and out forward enough that everyone can make their plans. And then also when we have those inevitable changes, to communicate those, through our Team Snap alerts, which gets that information. Oops, Krisha, somehow I think you shared your screen with us here. I don't know if you can shut that off, Krisha. There we go. Thank you. I'm learning more and more about Zoom every time I use it. And I didn't realize that the recording started automatically when I unmute and stop when I mute. And then now obviously the permissions were set up that anybody could share their screen. So please don't anybody video bomb the group. I know that's a thing also in this day of remote meetings and so forth. But anyway, thank you. So we try to provide as much information as we can through our website, through the Team Snap calendars, through the regular updates that we use through that we send through CampMinder. To give you that sort of longer term forward information as we get it, whether it's got to do with race calendars or upcoming meetings or upcoming events and so forth. And then, excuse me, using Team Snap for that, sort of last line of communication when we have an unexpected last minute change, or, change in a meeting spot, or change in a training venue, or what have you. And we really try to minimize those to the greatest extent that we can, so people really can, everyone can rely on the calendars to know where to go, what time, what equipment to have, and all of those kinds of things. And then certainly anytime that information that you need to have isn't available, through those formats, or also through the different website, that we provide links to, where you can get the information, whether it's from RMD and calendars and race, race announcements, to whether it's the FIS website or other website where that information is available publicly. And most of the information that is needed, we're getting from those same public sources. There's not a back office where coaches get advanced information when a race announcement's been posted or what have you. So typically, if you're trying to finalize something about a travel that's planned to a specific resort or a specific event, and the race announcement isn't on the RMD site, then we don't have it either. And we do, sort of prod the organizers, or R&D to, get those up there when we don't find them there, when we're trying to get them to share that information with you as well. But we're at the mercy of those organizers and, RMD when it comes to a lot of that information. In terms of race series, there's some detail on the way the race series are structured. And I've shared also the document that goes into the really nitty-gritty detail of how this takes place between the Devo level and the elite level at both sync and FIS events. And as well, there's a fair amount to learn, in terms of, how quotas work for either national events that are scheduled in Rocky, such as the national NGRs, both the Super G events as well as the GS is scheduled in Beaver Creek, which are obviously set in Rocky, but aren't open to the same normal entry process that other NGRs are, that are part of our Colorado Ski Cup, Colorado Surefoot Ski Cup schedule, or Devo schedule. And so that is, we recognize, confusing. So again, we try to communicate that information, specifically the affected individuals, ahead of time as much as we can. But we recognize that can be a little bit confusing and complicated, and sometimes even to us as coaches who are trying to navigate the system at the same time. But functionally, we have two levels of racing, both at the US ski and snowboard sanctioned events, which are scored for US ski and snowboard points, seed points, and as well the two FIS series, the Sync Devo the FIS Devo and the FIS series, which are then scored internationally to the FIS points list. And the systems are very similar in both, in that at the beginning of the season, that the 40 top athletes by points in Rocky Mountain Division are identified as automatics for either the FIS series, or in the case of U16s, for the Sync series. And those lists are published now on that same Rocky Mountain Division page that we've shared the link to a number of times. You can find it easily just by Googling RMD, US Ski and Snowboard, and that'll be the first hit on it. It'll be the RMD calendar page on the US Ski and Snowboard website. And there you can find links to the automatics list, as well as links to the calendar and links to other important information, rankings, point totals, series totals, all of those kinds of things. So basically those 40 automatics are being identified. Coaches are in the process of confirming athletes who are on those lists to make certain that those athletes are still active, competing in Rocky, and should be on that list. If there are pulls from that list, then that number will be expanded by 1 or 2 before that list is final. So there could be still some minor modifications to that, but then that will remain as the base list for the entirety of the season. Athletes will then be added to that list by their performance in the Devo events, and that is by winning a Devo event among the non-already qualified automatics and eliminating any out of division or out of region entries or any international entries. So the top non-automatic R&D skier in those Devo events, winning at the Devo level, will then become an automatic for the balance of the season in that series. There is an opportunity for the last or the final 25% of the automatics list has also then eligibility not just as an automatic for the elite series, but has the opportunity, if they choose to compete in the Devo level series. And that number is actually established on the top of those worksheets as a point cutoff by discipline. And so as long as the athlete is an automatic and their points are higher than the points that are the cutoff, then they can continue to pick and choose together with the coach's help if they go to both the elite level and the Devo level, or one or the other. So that's to allow those athletes that are on the tail end of the elite field the opportunity to be in a more reasonably competitive field with the other Devo. Somebody's unmuted here. Could please mute up there. Thank you. Once an athlete's points are higher than that, or lower, I should say, than that point range, then they do no longer have that opportunity to move back and forth. At that point, they are designated in the elite series, with one caveat that each of the Devo events will have pace skiers who are assigned from amongst the automatics based on their expressed intent, which the coaches will do. They'll have a worksheet for every one of those Devo events that are on the calendar, in which we can express the intent of that automatic to ski as a pace skier in that Devo event. And then those pace skiers will be assigned not necessarily by the lowest, as a maximum of 6 that will be assigned to do that for each Devo event, but they'll be assigned representatively from within the within those automatics who've expressed their intent. Meaning, if there's, let's say, 12 that have expressed their intent for the event, then every other one will be selected according to their ranking, not necessarily the 6 lowest point holders. So that would allow a representative group of pace skiers for that Devo event, and also then spread out the opportunity for the automatics to have those pace opportunities, which can be very, very good racing opportunities. Finally, the only other thing I'll say about the Sync and Devo level, this was something that was implemented last year in Rocky, that now has become a model for the nation and actually been mandated. The other regions create the same type of multi-level series in order to provide appropriate competition opportunities for each sort of each level of skiers, each group of skiers. So while many skiers themselves are certainly, parents as they're looking at it, think that the opportunities are best for their competition to be in that elite series. And indeed, they can be in some cases in terms of the penalties that are generated and so forth. But the data shows us very, very clearly over not just last year's experience, but for many years, that athletes who are more representative within the field in terms of their competitive level have a better opportunity to score those point results than when they're at the tail end of a more elite field, even though the penalty can be lower, in some cases much lower, because the fact that they're not able to compete for getting second run, getting in the flip for the second run and having that advantage starting position, or that the fact that they're skiing in the in the higher numbers, both first and second run, and deteriorated course conditions, make those races almost all of the time to be far less, far more challenging opportunities. That said, we always want to have the athletes be exposed to that level of competition. So when those athletes have an opportunity to move up to that elite level and experience that, then often, if not always, we'll recommend that those athletes take advantage of that. So in addition to the opportunity for the athletes to advance from the Devo level to become an automatic at the elite level by winning amongst the Devo level athletes in a race, then also from each Devo series, there will be an identified elite series that the 10 best athletes from that Devo race will have the opportunity to ski up to. So basically the best at the Devo level have the opportunity to ski up. The weaker skiers on the automatics list have a chance to ski down, as well as some pace skiers have a chance to pace at those Devo events, so that those that are on that line, that threshold between the two series, actually have the opportunity to go back and forth until they clearly establish up at the higher level series. As I mentioned, I did share the link to that document. If you have a good cup of coffee and a good set of reading glasses and a lot of patience, you can read through that, and then you can send me all your questions, because I know you'll have some. If you want to understand that more thoroughly, more completely, what exactly the intricacies and ins and outs of it are, but that helps to give a little bit of an understanding about that. The other thing that's important, particularly for those families who are advancing from age class to ability for the first time, we have a different travel policy and billing policy in the ability level than we do at the age class level. And at the age class level, all of the competitions, with the exception of the advancement opportunities into ability athletes for some of the U14s, all of the expense of the travel for the coaching staff are built into the budget and therefore into the program fees. And the reason that we're able to do that at the age class level is because those schedules are very predictable. We know the numbers of age class events. We know that there's both a divisional and a regional championship. We know that there's some opportunities in the spring to attend the Loveland Derby and the GS Spectacular. And so we can plan and budget and include those expenses in the budget. At the ability level with U16s and even more so with the FIS athletes, there are literally no two schedules that are the same for an athlete. I mean, they will be based on their performance, be qualifying for different events. They'll have opportunities to travel, divisionally, regionally, nationally, even internationally in some cases. And so, those expenses of the coaches and providing that supported events is highly variable. And so what we do at the ability level is that we divide all of those expenses for the coaches amongst all of the attending athletes. In those circumstances, when we do offer a team travel opportunity, which will be in a few cases this coming year, then those additional expenses, whether we have a team condo or hotel rooms or what have you, those also will be built into that and will be expensed out to the participating athletes. And I've developed some spreadsheet templates, to calculate all that. All of that will be transparent. In the case of team travel, we'll present it ahead of time so that athletes can also look and choose if they're going to participate in the team travel opportunity when there is one, or not, and what those estimated expenses are going to be, whether it's for vehicle, lodging, et cetera, et cetera. And then those coaches' expenses will be allocated amongst all of the attending athletes and dependent on the number of days that they attend. So, one of the places that we will offer a team travel opportunity is when we travel to Aspen for the Speed Week, where we have U16 and FIS together doing both downhill and Super G. The women going first for 3 days, the men going next for 3 days, the coaches staying there for 6 days, some athletes skiing in the downhill and Super G, some skiing only in the Super G. Obviously it gets, a little more complicated in terms of that. But all that's built in so that those expenses are allocated and shared equally amongst all of the team members that are traveling there. But rather than try to build all of those expenses into a budget where someone who might only travel to a handful of races, we have a few athletes in our ability program who last year trained but didn't travel to any races. It's not fair to them to bear some of the cost of the coaches' travel to races where others may have traveled 40 or 50, to 40 or 50 events over the course of the season and have that expense. So that's just a little bit of an explanation how we do that. For any of those events that we don't have a team travel plan, those will be accounted and allocated for after the fact. We'll always share the spreadsheets. Those expenses will be charged to each individual's account, in CampMinder, and then, it can be paid, how you customarily make your, program fee payments or, by whatever method you choose to do it. But always the worksheets that we use to determine how those expenses are allocated will be available publicly and transparent to all of those that participated in the event. Because we recognize that travel to events is expensive, and also we want to provide the opportunity for our athletes to be able to train to compete at home on hills that they're familiar with and train on. So I apologize. This is something that I talked about both in the general Alpine meeting as well as the age class meeting. But again, it's a big enough deal that I want to bring it up again. And in the event that any of you miss those meetings and want to review the meeting, those recordings are, if not already available, going to be soon available on the page on the Team Summit website where the links were to each of these individual meetings so that you can review those and go through that. But we try to run events for each of our age groups to be able to compete at home. So specifically for the U16 and FIS, we're fortunate that, and it's not 100% finalized yet with the Sync Championships. We hope that it is. We're just waiting for final confirmation from Breckenridge whether they can run their portion of it, which is the Super G and the GS for the Sync Championships in March. It is on the calendar that way. But caveat, it hasn't been 100% confirmed yet by Breckenridge, and we're trying to get that confirmation ASAP. I was promised I'd have it yesterday, but it wasn't in my inbox. So that's the only one that's in question right now, but that is the season-ending Sync Championship with Slalom GS and Super G for all of our U16s. And then for the FIS athletes, we have several opportunities. Obviously the NORAMs and as well the NJR Super Gs that are being hosted at Copper. Although the club is not directly involved in hosting those events, those are hosted by the Copper competition department. We're still asked to help support those from time to time. There are not volunteer opportunities that are established on the web for that presently, but if we get the call and some positions, then that will be added and we'll let everybody know when that's added. But the coaches have been asked to help with, with course crews, some jury responsibilities and things like that. Particularly since Copper just picked up the NORAM slaloms, which were canceled by Vail because they weren't prepared with their training venue yet. So there's 6 days of NORAM racing starting on the 18th and going through the 23rd at Copper. allow that level of our athlete to be able to compete at home. We do have then a Elite FIS series also that's scheduled at Breckenridge and Keystone. That's in March. I don't have, or maybe February. I don't have those dates in my head right now, as well as a Devo FIS series slaloms that are being held at Keystone. So there are a number of events that we've been able to secure on the calendar. And again, we do that to the benefit of our athletes. We generate obviously entry fees from those, but then we have the expenses of the site fees that we have to pay to the resorts. And then when we don't have qualified volunteers within our organization to fill the key roles, then we actually have to contract those out at some significant expense. And we're always paying for the expenses of the technical delegates, as well as any other jury members that we actually have to hire because we can't fill the spots from within our own membership. So that's why you've seen the appeals from me to to all of you to engage both as volunteers, because there's plenty of volunteers needed that don't require having officials certifications, but particularly then to have those official certifications for race administrator responsibility, any of the other jury member positions that we have to fill, start and finish referees, chief of race. To the extent that we can do those with volunteers, right now we have to pay for our chief of race. We have to pay for our race administrators, in addition to what we'll always have to pay for is our visiting technical delegates. Those are things that make it very difficult for us to even break even, on a financial standpoint on those events. But we undertake that risk because we value having the kids being able to stay at home in their own beds, eat at home and not have those travel expenses, be able to use their existing passes and so forth to be able to race at home as much as possible. So that's my appeal, to all of you as parents to engage in that way with the club and with the athletes racing, and help us to run those events, because they are critical to us from cost savings and also an athletic advantage basis. So with that, I've covered kind of all of the things that I wanted to cover with all of you. I'll open it up to the floor for any questions, if there's any immediate questions. And again, invite any and all to reach out to me personally, or to Doug when it's matters to do with FIS, or Jack when it's matters to do with conditioning specifically. And at any time for things that may not have been covered in the meeting or distributed in the updates, or available on the web, or at the US Ski and Snowboard or RMD pages and other places that we try to point everyone to find the information that's critical for you to have. So by all means, if you have questions, just unmute, ask them. I am monitoring the chat. If there's any that don't have a microphone, want to put something in the chat, I can also check there. And if there is nothing, then we'll close the meeting here shortly, but I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to see if there's any questions that this information is raised. Okay, well, not to belabor the point, but again, feel free to reach out to me directly if I can be helpful in any way, or the rest of the coaching staff. And again, thank you for making time to allow me to present some of this information in a way that's most efficient for us to be able to provide to the group as a whole, and the recording to this meeting and as well the others that we've done will be posted and available online for anybody who missed it. So thanks very much for making time today. Okay, thanks everybody, and bye. See you all soon.